Another topic. Question. Is Ron Paul poised to make a big power play in the Hawkeye state? And can he overcome the newsletter flap to win the caucuses? Joining us now, we welcome a senior advisor to the Ron Paul campaign, Doug Wead. Doug, thank you for coming on. Before we begin, I just want to get your reaction to something Newt Gingrich said today during an interview earlier. Please take a listen.
I think Ron Paul's views are totally outside the mainstream of virtually every decent American. I think the choice of Ron Paul or Barack Obama would be a very bad choice for America. He's not going to get the nomination. It won't happen.
All right, Doug Wead, you heard him. I want to give you a chance to respond to what Newt's saying to diss your man, Ron Paul. What's your reaction, Doug?
Well, I like Newt Gingrich. I like his wife, Calista, but I have to say the last Washington Post poll showed Ron Paul doing better in the general election against Barack Obama than Newt Gingrich. And not getting on your own home state. I mean, Ron Paul was able to easily qualify on the Virginia state. So we're pleased with Ron Paul. He's incorruptible. He's peaking at the right time, and he's going to be a real player for this nomination.
As someone who's interviewed Congressman Paul many times, and by the way, it's no secret, I am highly sympathetic with his free market economic views and his Federal Reserve views. But, Doug, I want to get your take. This is tough stuff. I am not at all happy with these reports about the newsletters. Quote, it is logical to be afraid of black men. Quote, the L.A. riots about Rodney King ended only because welfare checks arrived in the mail. And more generally, anti-Semitism charges, white supremacy charges, neo-Nazi charges. This stuff is crazy, Doug. It's not self-respecting. It's unbecoming for Mr. Paul. What are you all going to do about it?
Well, it sure isn't, and Ron Paul has disavowed it. He didn't write it. It was 20 years ago, and we are right now seeing our polling begin to climb again. So we think that flap would have stuck.
Did he not read it? In other words, putting your name to something you haven't read is nearly as bad as putting your name to something you have read. In other words, you got to disconnect here, Doug, and I'm being honest with you.
That's true, and that was 20 years ago, and not getting on the Virginia ballot shows poor judgment too, which is current. But all I can say is if those views were his and they reflected his real feeling, they would stick, but they don't. And I think that's why it's had such a short shelf life.
But do you think if he's criticized and attacked for it this week, the remaining 7 days of the Iowa caucuses, where the polling data suggests things are still in a great state of flux, and Ron Paul is running neck and neck for the lead, will he opine on this? Will he say these were mistakes? Will he disavow the people that wrote this trash?
Yes, he's already disavowed the statements, and he's said it was a mistake in judgment. But the people who support us right now in Iowa are students who are paying 8% on their student loans, while big bankers are getting 0% interest, billions of dollars. They're people who've lost the value of their homes. And when only Ron Paul spoke up about the immorality of what was coming with the collapse of the housing market. And they're people who've lost the value of their IRAs. They're tired of insiders gaming the system.
I appreciate
and Ron Paul is their only.
I appreciate the economic analysis. As I said, I tend to be quite sympathetic to it. I'm horrified at these newsletters, and I think you all got to do something to get out from under it.
Well,
frankly,
you're right.
I'd like to see Dr. Paul just make more statements disavowing them, but we're flat out of time. Doug Wead, you're very nice to come on and give us your insights into this. We appreciate it. Let's come back to our distinguished panel. Ari Melber of The Nation, James Pethokoukis, the American Enterprise Institute and CNBC, David Fredosa, the Washington Examiner. Dave, go to you first. Straight political question. Can Paul get out from under this?
He can. He can get out of it by explaining when he became aware of what was in those newsletters and what he did to correct it, if anything. And if he didn't do anything to correct it, then no, he can't get out from under it. But if he did something, he can identify the people who wrote them. The answer he has given so far, as someone who also
he hadn't done that yet. He hadn't done that yet. He's basically saying he tried to convert them.
Exactly.
They can endorse him, but he won't endorse them. He's playing games, Jimmy, which I don't like at all.
At any point did he make a phone call to anybody and say, I just found out what you guys were writing. Are you crazy? crazy?
Right.
I haven't heard anything about that. And listen, the longer he's in the race, the more you're going to hear about the libertarian movement's flirtation with these neo-Nazi, trying to bring them into the movement. You hear more about
what
that.
What the hell, by the way? Can I just ask a dumb question? As a free market guy, I'm not a Libertarian Party guy. What does this stuff, this crazy neo-Nazi stuff, for example, or this racist stuff, have to do with free market economics of the Austrian school, which I do admire? What does that have to do with it?
Well, the libertarian movement was not expanding its numbers, and they ran presidential candidates like Ron Paul, who only got 0.5% of the vote, and they felt they could make common cause with these far, right, far off the map extremists because they were also anti-government, anti-Fed. Of course, they were anti-Fed because they thought it was all run by the Jews, but they were anti-Fed. So trying to bring and enlarge the movement. It was, I think,
I get this on the radio show. I get this from callers, and I just slam them down. Aaron Melbert, let me go to you. With a week to go, does this stuff impact the Iowa race? Now, we've circled the wagons on this, but you were telling me off the air that when you worked for John Kerry, the last week doesn't count. Is that going to be true this year? Are you sure?
I'm not sure, and I'm here talking to you in New Jersey. I'm not in Iowa this year, but when I was in Iowa and I had 19 precincts, after Christmas, you knock on the doors, and people are generally pretty nice, but they say no thanks. You see the direct mail, piles of it, because that's what really moves people when they won't pick up the phone, the big pictures of the candidates and the criticisms, and they move it directly into the trash or recycling. So yes, there's a declining marginal return on communications in this final week.